there's so much going on in European football at the moment, Klaus.
Yeah.
What do you see as the main challenging challenges facing the European leagues and Denmark in particular? I guess in your case.
Um, well, I don't know. The landscape is, if we take Denmark, for instance, we're in a very good place. The league is in a very good shape. Clubs are financially run very balanced. Most of our clubs are profitable. We're in spectate numbers of spectators are growing, and we have a fairly okay competitive balance in Denmark. Um, it's so many things are going really well. If we take at some of the challenges out there, that for one there is there's the calendar or the international match calendar. That is a challenge, even for a league like the Danish one, where we basically have just one cup and 32 or 33 rounds. But it's still challenging, especially spring,
Yep.
to get a number of matches in there. So that's a challenge, and it's also a challenge with the competitive balance from the European club competitions. Not at the moment in Denmark, but it's a big issue. If we have a look at Austria, for instance, which had the same champions for 11 years or something in a row now. So the impact of the European club competitions, and it is something that we will have to handle, because there is a still larger push from the big clubs, both from mid-sized and smaller leagues and from the biggest leagues, to play more and more European matches, and for the European matches to be the what is prioritized when we're having a look at it. And that's not a good thing, because if you take a look at football, the domestic competitions are the backbone of European football, and they are the reason that football is a pertaining culture in Europe, with such a big following in each nation. We could probably grow European competitions to be even bigger, but the thing is, we might lose the backbone.
Yep.
And that would make the the total culture, also the total business, and the total number of jobs so much less than it is today. So that's a major challenge, and then one of the side challenges is, or that's going to be a major challenge as well. That is the handling of the multi-club ownership. I
Yep.
mean, it's come too far to shut it down already. So we will need to get a grab on how to handle it, because that has the potential to jeopardize the legitimacy of the competitions. And if we lose that, we lose the reason why we're here. So we must take care of that.
When you say take care of that, Klaus, what would you like to see put in place to ensure that integrity of competition?
I think we need to put measures in place that, first of all, have a look at that transfers between clubs, even if they have the same investors or the same owners, need to be at the actual value, and we need to take care of that. Also, because honestly speaking, sooner or later, some tax authorities are gonna have a look at it as well, because it is transfer pricing in other industries.
Yep.
And of course you can put a value on a transfer, as you can with very complex commodities. But we need to take care of that. And then, in my view, we probably also need to have a look at mechanisms that will slow down the transfer of players between clubs owned by the same investors. And we need to have a look at some kind of regulations, and that's for some accountants to do and some specialists to do. But I think it's essential that we do that before time runs out on this issue, and before we're compromised in our competitions. And it's a real risk.
Well, I like you say, it's a real growing trend, isn't it? There are so many
It is.
multi-club owners out there.
There are so many multi-club owners, and if you just put a ban in, I think one thing that is needed is essential is transparency of ownership, and that we actually that we track who the ultimate owners are. We've just put measures in place in Denmark actually with our regulations with a shift of ownership also, where it's not just the ultimate owners, but also where is the capital ultimately derived, where does that come from? And so we're gonna need that transparency. That's the first thing. And then we're gonna but a ban of it or trying to get rid of it will never work, because there will be so many ways of circumventing this. So it'll be, we'll just be chasing windmills, I think, if we try to do this. So we need to instead put regulations on transactions between clubs with the same investors in place.
And talking about European competition, we've seen an expanded Champions League this season, Europa League, Europa Conference League, and from the outside looking in, it looks as though that has been successful in terms of some clubs that you wouldn't expect perhaps making it to the latter stages. How do you view that? Do you think that has been an experiment that has worked?
Yeah, there are parts of it. In general, I think yes, the experiment has worked. If you take the new competition format with the Swiss model, I think yes, it has worked. It has revitalized the competition. It has produced more variety among the clubs meeting each other, and it has produced less games with nothing at stake. And if you take a look at expanding the Champions League, I have a hard time saying if that's a success, but I would say the invention of the European Conference League, of the Conference League, is a big success. It allows smaller clubs to participate in Europe, but I think even more important, I think actually that competition has more identification. That, for instance, whereas the Champions League relies solely on mega brands, so to speak, then the Conference League is very strong of creating identification with the fans. It can do things that domestic competitions also can at some point, and it broadens the experience. I also think it broadens the number of clubs that get an option to play in Europe, and hence also I think it's not bad for the competitive balance in the domestic competitions.
Yeah,
the number of match days is a big issue.
Yeah,
and will have to be addressed. I mean, the exclusive, first and foremost, in general, I think, in my view, the number of match days are too many. Fortunately, the Swiss model actually allows you to model the number of wished for match days. The exclusive weeks need to go, and the January matches also need to go. It's they're very disruptive to domestic scheduling, and if we're talking cannibalization of the market, then playing in January in the European club competitions, no one needs that. And also the round of 16 and things. There needs to be fewer match days,
Yep.
and if that hurts the overall commercial income, which I think won't be significant, but so be it, because it'll be a big issue for the commercial income in the domestic competition, and who wants to destroy the backbone that are feeding the European competitions? So
And internationally, do you think that more needs to be done to slim down the international schedule as well? Because there are now more international windows than there have been in the past, and that inevitably has a knock-on effect on domestic football, doesn't it?
it does, and I think something needs to be done. If we're talking an international window, if you take the Danish case, then the number of international windows in autumn, it's in the it's the best dates in the season. Maybe August is better, but it's September, October, where the weather is good, so it's some of the best dates in the season, and we cannot keep expanding this, and then there is the expansion of the World Cup or the European Cup, and that's simply something, so far no voices has been raised that we need to, but everyone talks about rumors that players needs to be released earlier for the next World Cup. I would say we will go as far as to say we won't do it in a Danish context if it comes to that, because we simply cannot. We need the month of May, because it's something you can do in England or other places where you can play all winter where there's no break. But we need to do this. We cannot not play the whole month of May. It's not an option.
No. Can you just talk through your schedule as it stands at the moment?
I think we start mid-July. Then we play until, including the cup quarterfinal, till mid-December, and then we start again mid-February.
Okay.
And given the European club competitions, we will have to revise this. This is, for instance, should Copenhagen make the finals this year, we will have to move the cup final, which is not a sustainable scenario for us to do more than once. So future scheduling will have to start earlier. We will have to do that anyway, and that's probably where it will end. But we will still need till the end of May, and it's a very short summer window we have. There's
it's getting shorter and shorter, isn't it? Almost getting to the point where you've got an 11-month season.
We do. We have 11-month season.
Yeah.
We're close, because if someone needs to start, and we need to have a look at that as well with the European club competitions. We need to have a look at the access, the qualification rounds. There are too many for the clubs, for clubs from smaller and mid-sized countries. There are too many. So someone needs to have a look at how to engineer the competition format on that, because you risk starting July 1st, actually.
Yeah. Is this something that the European leagues are taking on themselves to put pressure on UEFA?
Yeah, I think fortunately we're at a place where we do not need to put pressure on UEFA. Actually, we are at a place right now, and we should safeguard that, and UEFA should as well. And they've been, contrary to what we're experiencing with FIFA, UEFA went the other way and actually increased dialogue and are prepared to listen. And I hope so. So it is certainly something we will engage with UEFA on, to see where can we go with this. We have, as you can see, there's the litigation against FIFA, so we're having a very hard time having a dialogue with FIFA. But with UEFA, There's been a big change in UEFA's attitude since 16. You know, where UEFA launched a format that sort of resembled the Super League format. But UEFA now, I think for the time being, UEFA have a fair degree of recognition that domestic football is the backbone of European football, and they should have, of course, because if you take a look at it, and you know, we sometimes forget that it's the federations that are, which are grassroots football, that are the members of UEFA. FIFA have certainly forgot it a long time ago, but but yes, it's going to be a key point in the dialogue with UEFA, because it is an issue, and the the media rights market has proven, as you well know, not to have unlimited growth. So it is a real issue, the impact that the economic impact that the club competitions have as well, and we need to have that dialogue on how do we balance this. But so far we've been able to have a good dialogue, and I also think I would expect that UEFA, after the first round of the new format, would invite to an evaluation. So we will put the points on the table there.
And you mentioned the Super League there. Obviously, it's been a while since the initial plans were unveiled, to widespread despair, disdain, and a number of other words that I probably can't mention. It still seems to be hanging around though, Klaus. Do you think it will come back? Do you think we'll see the European Super League attempt to relaunch in some form or other in the next few years?
No, I think we'll see the Global Super League to be launched as a format, and to be expanded that way.
To run alongside domestic competitions, or as a breakaway?
That's hard to say. You know, the way FIFA are handling the Club World Cup right now is similar to the breakaway. So it doesn't matter, in my view, whether it's FIFA running it. Well, it's worse if it's FIFA running it. But the thing is, it's a real danger if FIFA continues down that road, because it will mean that FIFA will lose their legitimacy. You know, if they continue expanding that, then there will be a natural conversation. You know, what is there then an obligation to release players for the World Cup and the competitions there? I would say FIFA would lose the legitimacy to have such a claim. So it will end up being a club choice whether you will release players for the international competitions.
Do you think the Club World Cup is a global Super League in another name at the moment?
Not yet, but I think that's the ambition, and everything we hear from FIFA is the global Super League. And I would be very surprised if the ambition is not to expand it beyond a summer period and beyond every second year. That would surprise me.
And well, if you look at the prize money, it's very, very difficult for clubs to say no to that kind of cash, isn't it?
It is. And then we have the match calendar, and then what happens? Because if those clubs cannot have they will need to play the domestic competitions as well. Otherwise, it's an issue for those clubs. So which matches should the players then not play? Club World Cup matches, domestic matches, or matches for their national squad? That's going to be a real choice. And where that ends, no one can say, but it's going to be the choice that must be made.
Yeah, and it's a sort of problem that we see mirrored across other sports.
Yes.
And unfortunately, money talks, doesn't it, at the end of the day?
But it does. but then again, you have to have a look at the total industry, and there's very little outlook that way, because if you aggregate things, then domestic competitions, if money talks, domestic competitions are way ahead. But it's not for the high level income, or it's for all clubs, but domestic, but income from domestic competitions in Europe. And that's of course the real risk, is that we're having a very Eurocentric view on everything.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine somewhere else in the world, a Club World Cup or a World Super League makes perfect sense. Or a couple of regional competitions, and then a World Super League on top would make so much sense many other places in the world than it does in Europe.
Yeah, I
And
think if you're
that's the dilemma we'll always face.
I think if you're in South America, large part of Asia, USA,
Africa.
Australia, then it does make sense.
Yeah.
But being from Denmark, Klaus, and the Danish Super League, you've already had a victory over the Super League, haven't you? Because the European Super League couldn't be called the European Super League because you've already taken that name.
Yes, we own the Super League trademark,
Yeah.
and we do so on Danish territory, and we do so on European territory.
1-0 to Denmark.
So 1-0 to Denmark. Yeah, we're quite pleased with this. And the honest version of it is that we're gonna have a hard time defending this in Spain if it was put up for. But we would defend it we would be able to defend it in Scandinavia, I'm sure. So the Super League will never be the Super League in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
So I don't know, as you say, money talks. It might, but it would be very expensive for the Super League to be named the Super League in Scandinavia.
Excellent. And have you just relinquished the presidency of the European Super League? The European leagues yourself. Is there just been a new chairman?
Yes,
Appointed?
Claudius Schäfer from Switzerland is
Yeah.
the new president. I believe is the real term, and Mathieu Moret from the Premier League is the new vice president.
Just looking to the future briefly, Klaus, are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you curious about what's going to happen?
I think there are challenges out there. The ones we've discussed. Then there are the media markets, which have gone, if you call it, I don't know, which has become unstable. Basically because the business models are not in place. Nobody knows where they're going. I'm not concerned for the value of the competitions, actually. I think the media value is there, but the question is there anyone to pick up that value? But so there are challenges out there, but in general, if I have a look at the development of the Danish Super League, then I would be dumb to be pessimistic. We are having a very good development. Apart from that, apart from the number of spectators, we have good stadiums. We have a fantastic talent development and fantastic talent development and academies out there. Although that is also that's also a liquid income, I would say, because they can't all end up playing in the Premier League. So is there a bubble out there, and at what point will it burst? But anyway, right now we're very good at developing talent. So there are so many things. So in my view, we should be optimistic, but there are real issues like the cannibalization from the international competitions, if they're not handled right. Multi-club ownership, if it's not handled right. The match scheduling, if it's not brought into place. And also the media market. But it also gives I think, what we have recently established our own production company, so we as a league now produce all domestic matches, and that's more important than it sounds, because generally, if we're outside the Premier League, then football clubs are not. They seem to be large corporations, but that's because they're hyper exposed. In generally, they're small. They're small enterprises. Maybe we've got one club in Denmark that fits the EU definition of being medium-sized. So what's important about that is that we're creating tech platforms and a digitization and developing that aspect, that in the way of handling the relationship with our fans, with media, the media rights, bringing in new, servicing present partners better, bringing in new partners is very important, and I think we will see more of that happening. That leagues will try and invest in their own tech platforms, and that's going to be one of the necessary steps to sort of secure the framework under the domestic competitions.
Under the tech platforms, do clubs have the right to screen highlights of their own games on their own apps, for example?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, what we're doing here is it's not so much the highlights, because the highlights but that's in the Danish context, are here, there, and everywhere. So but the thing is, for instance, that clubs will have direct access to every kind of pictures just out of the match, that they can communicate to fans with, that we can invest in new technology so players themselves can post, in the locker room after the match, can post a great goal they scored on their Instagram or wherever it is. Things like that we can enable our clubs to do, so the engagement with the fans become so much more present, and of a quality with that. Because if you have a look at what happens in many, or particularly in Denmark, we have two competitors. It's the Premier League and the Champions League.
Yeah.
And their marketing budgets are bigger than our total turnover. So it's so, and at the same time, we need to look the same. To sort of like to see how can we maintain domestic competitions as the premium product in the domestic markets, although football should never become a product or just a product, but we need to do this to be there in the future. And I think I think we're going to see clubs and domestic competitions traveling down that road to to sort of like handle their own future.
Yeah, it makes sense. Excellent. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Claus.
You're welcome.